80%. That's a pretty high statistic, right? I mean, I'd be thrilled if 80% of the people on Instagram that saw my reel actually watched 50% of it, let alone 80%. Well, guess what? That reel you spent half of your morning making, it may not be as effective as guesting on one podcast where a staggering 80% of podcast listeners stay tuned for most or all of the episode. I'm Sheldon Rodriguez, a podcast strategist helping purpose-driven solopreneurs connect to their ideal clients for podcasting. Right now, I'm here to help you level up with podcast guesting. I've got 2 full episodes on Authenticity Amplified to talk about it. But to make things really easy, I'll start with just one of those strategies. The third strategy is the value first prep method. So when you get ready to go on to a podcast, you need to listen to preferably 3 episodes. If you can work them into your drive, work them into your schedule, it's not as hard as it sounds. And so you want to listen to their most recent episode, so you're up on what they're talking about most currently, their most popular episode, if you can suss that out, and then one that relates to the topic aligned with what you're going to speak on or your industry, so that you can be well-versed in what's previously been said, what their audience is already familiar with in this topic, so you can be building on that and connecting to that. And if you really had to just boil it down to one, that would be the one that you'd boil it down to. And when you do that listening, I really recommend doing a podcast prep profile, is what I call it. And we talk about that more in our 4-part training. But you want to talk about, note the things that the questions they most commonly ask, if they have any favorite topics they lean towards, and really see if the audience's pain point comes out of that. And some of these things you can also get from their website or from their social media. If they have an Instagram page, if they have Facebook, if you can glean it from those pieces as well. But if you just listen to those 3 episodes, you could probably get that just from those episodes. But if you skip and only listen to one, you probably have to glean it from those other places as well. And then you also want to be able to relate how your expertise can address those elements, especially the pain points for the audience and those questions they most commonly ask, right? So that you can connect to those topics and see how what you talk about connects to that, so that you can connect. And the real beauty is when you're requested to be on a podcast, definitely listen to one of those, if not 3 of those, and reference that when you're trying to get on a podcast. I guarantee you those are the people who've gotten onto my podcast via cold emails, cold conversations, is actually referencing and being familiar with my podcast. Because I think I mentioned in the previous episode, I get requests where they don't even name what podcast. I have more than one podcast. And they got my email. They don't know that I have more than one podcast. They just put me on a bulk mailing list with this blanket thing and sent this email to 30 people. And so they don't even name what my podcast is. And so those are the ones that typically don't get a response from me. And so that's an important thing for you to be able to say, oh yeah, I listened to this episode. I really appreciate how you tap into the expertise of your guest, but ask questions in a way that's really unique, such as when you ask this question of this guest. And if you know an actual question they asked one of their guests, they will be so impressed with you. And when you go on to the podcast, if you can actually reference back to a former episode for the audience's benefit, they will be thrilled with that. And the guests will be thrilled with that. And the audience will feel like they're included because you know what they've listened to and you know who they are. And they will feel more connected to you, and they're more likely to follow you and connect with you and respect you because you've done your homework and you're part of their community and not just somebody that showed up and said some things at one time. So those are the type of things you really want to do if you want to be successful in getting on podcasts and also getting the audience to connect with you and continue with you. So that value first prep method can really make a difference on how successful you are with podcast guesting. That was pretty helpful, right? Do you want more? There's 4 on the full episode. 5 advanced strategies for being a podcast guest. Or you can simply check out the next one. It's right there. All 5. Just one more. And I've got a tip sheet below that will give you different strategies to be on the show. I've got your back. Podcast guesting is what you want to be checking out.